Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Smash Dispatch podcast. As always, I am one of yours, Fidel. Joined alongside me, Mr. Ultimate Shadow X.
Hello.
How are you?
I am excellent.
How's everything? How's life been? What have you been playing? What you been doing?
We've both been real busy, getting work done. You got that fucking partner.
I did. Yes, sir. Very happy. Very exciting times. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, there's been the past 2 weeks with games. There's been so many because whether it's PS5 or now with Age of Calamity, there's a million things to play. I'm all in, Yeah, exactly. So what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, this is unrelated to the topic that we're gonna cover today, but it actually it ended up it is the 6-year anniversary of Smash for Wii U.
Yeah, crazy.
That came out
right?
6 years ago today.
That's insane, and actually, that's actually kind of a good starting comment because what's it called? I think last week I was streaming the Wii U, right? And people were like, try Smash 4. And I tried it, and it was unreal. Because I have never touched Smash 4 ever since Ultimate. And have you done it? Have you ever done
No, I really have wanted to. I have watched videos of people going back to it.
It's insane, dude. If you do it, I was genuinely shocked at how much slower it was. And how clunky it felt. It was so weird.
It's from what I've watched and from it's a lot of it was videos of pros or other Smash players going back to it for either April Fools,
right.
That sort of thing. And a lot of it was it not only does it feel slower, but because I think it's a more I'm not saying Ultimate isn't, but I'm saying it's a more methodical game. You have to be very
right.
People would you'd make slight movements, you'd shield. It's a very defensive, slower game. Mm-hmm. I think what gets me about it is the knockback is so slow. Even when you KO someone, they don't just they don't zoom across the screen.
Yeah, they're
Ultimate. They're just getting pulled away by a cane. You know what I mean? They're just getting slowly float away.
It's like that. It's like that clip from Dragon Ball Super where Hercules fake punches Goku and Goku's and he floats slowly.
Yeah.
It's like that. No, it was crazy, but it blew me away just because at the time I remember I was oh, this is perfect. There's nothing wrong with this. It's fantastic. But yeah, it's crazy if you go back to it genuinely just feels like a worse version of Smash that you would never want to play. And what was funny is we went online and there was someone playing online. I found that really funny. Someone out there just playing Smash Wii U online.
Yeah, that's
it's really fucking funny. But yeah, I think also Melee came out 18 years ago today. Today's a crazy day for
Melee
Smash.
came out 19 years ago, but in Japan. Not
okay.
quite here. Yeah, it was a little bit delayed here, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But still, 19 years of Melee, and obviously that's going to be a topic today of how it's just still relative that game is. How important it is to people.
Yeah,
Crazy
for sure.
Yeah, and so speaking of Melee, today's topic, basically it's going to be kind of a fusion of ideas. It's going to be it's funny because we inherently had the idea this week of either doing about indies or how Smash can learn from other fighting games and stuff. And obviously, with recent news of what happened with Smash and Nintendo and all this stuff, I feel like doing a topic about how Nintendo can learn from others or all that is relevant. So you know what? Let's dive in. So Ultima, I think you're more well versed in this specific topic than I am. So go ahead and explain what happened, the statements, all that stuff.
Okay, so basically, there is a big tournament that's, I believe Big House is based in Michigan. It's based in Detroit. Now, obviously, there's no physical tournaments, but Big House, no physical tournaments this year, but Big House is a staple of the Smash community.
Right.
It's one of the bigger, events of the year for all Smash games. And again, it's always hosted in Michigan. Of course, they were going to do an online event this year.
Right.
What happened was there is a fan project for Melee that basically allows it to be played with rollback netcode online.
Right.
It is not a ROM hack. It is not a mod. It is just it is you're not modifying the game. It's basically like a program to run Melee through so that you have rollback netcode, from what I understand.
Right, and so like it pretends that you're doing local multiplayer, but with online, or does it add like an online mode? You know what I mean? Like when you open it, I'm not sure.
It basically it's like a custom version of like the Dolphin launcher.
Right. Okay.
So like. Okay. So yeah, it basically is emulating like a rollback netcode.
Right. Okay.
Specifically for Melee, like it was basically designed like entirely for Melee.
Right.
And that's why like it's so good at what it is, like in terms of like how it functions. You know what I mean? Because for a lot of pros are like, this is really good, and as unfortunately we see it, a lot of people say like this is better than Ultimate's online, because there is no rollback in Ultimate. So basically, to dial it back to the tournament, because there are no physical events, they're online only. The only way that you can play Melee online is through an emulator. Right. And because it's through an emulator, and they were doing it through Slippy, because Slippy is obviously the best way to play it online, because it has the rollback netcode. Because Nintendo basically was somewhat involved with this event, because as we've mentioned before, if Nintendo's involved with an event, they're basically just like, hey, you are allowed to play our games at this event. Right. They don't really do anything else. You're not giving them money or anything like that. They're basically just saying like, hey, you're allowed to play the game. But the edge of that is, they didn't like that this tournament was using Slippy. They said, hey, don't use Slippy, or at least according to Nintendo, they were like, hey, don't use Slippy. Big House said no, because, this is the best interest of our players. And Nintendo basically said, okay, well, we're pulling out not only Melee, but we're also pulling out Ultimate too.
Okay.
And that is where the free Melee hashtag, and there's a lot of uproar about it, is coming in. And that's where we are at now. Right. Nintendo did put out a statement about it that we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, basically that is what happened.
That's like the gist of it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Oh man, yeah, that's definitely again, obviously, like I found it.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I agree. Like I think, I think people have a right to be angry at Nintendo, but I think people are. I think, as you said, it's a lot of it is being muddied. Like again, and Nintendo is, and yes, I agree, Nintendo is in their right to do this. But it's a matter of if they should or shouldn't. Right. And again, I think people are very quick, because a lot of corporations are like this. I think a lot of people are quick to think that this is Nintendo being completely evil. Right. Yeah. And I don't see it that way. It's not a matter of evil. It's just they just don't understand. They're old. They're old fashioned. Yeah. Like what I mean. And I really agree with that. I think they just don't know any better when it comes to this sort of area. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like again, we'll read their statement, what they mean. Like for me, like again, I obviously didn't want to talk about this on Twitter, because everybody has a different opinion on this, and everybody's gonna yell. Like that's not the best.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it's money. Like there are clear facts in this situation, but it's a matter of like should Nintendo actually have done it, instead of like, are they allowed to do it? Because they are allowed to do it.
Yeah, because this specific situation, I don't feel like this was like everybody against Nintendo. I feel like there was like a group of people that were like, I mean, if they said no and they did it anyways, it's within the right. But then there's another group that are like, okay, just let it happen. Like it really is like it's definitely a tricky situation in that sense. But like, I mean, for me, it's more of a question of like, listen, like it's weird, right? It's weird because like Melee specifically, right? Like I feel like it's such a unique fighting game, because yes, there are tournaments for older fighting games, right? Like people still play Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter 3 or Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or 3, but it's much more low key, right? Like those events are much more smaller. Like I've been to EVO, it's not like when I went to EVO, I mean not last year because they cut it off last year, but like the year before that, where like they have the big stage for Melee, right? It's like it's the small screens on the side, it's like a smaller thing. It's like Melee is a very specific situation where it's this old game that I'm definitely sure, I'm telling you right now, Nintendo doesn't give a shit about anymore, right? They have a new Smash game. That's what they're trying to sell. That's what they want you to play. And it's like this constant feeling of like, oh, okay, we gotta support this old community. And now not only do they want our support, but now they want to be able to run emulation to make it have online. And like that's right. Like I think that specific thing really is where it gets muddy. It's already one thing to do it on Dolphin.
So that's not what I'm saying. So in terms of like why Nintendo they technically do have the right to do that. Again, they are not. Again, Slippy is not modding the game. It is not a hack of the game. It is a program. And Nintendo, like obviously, in their statement, they claim that the event organizers were providing like illegal copied versions of the game in conjunction with Slippy. Now I don't believe that. I think what happened with the tournament was like, hey, wink wink nudge nudge, you know where to get this stuff. And obviously Nintendo's gonna be like, we can't, they're probably like, we don't want to, like, in good faith, like, just let that happen. And I also think it's a gray area where, like, they don't, like, legally they don't really, like, they don't care. Like, legally, they can't, like, shut down emulators or like, take away ROMs and stuff like that.
Because, like,
the thing is that they can't prove where people are getting these ROMs. And because they can't prove that the ROMs these people are getting weren't from pirated copies or something like that, like, it's a very, like, what I'm saying is, like, I'm not agreeing with what they're saying. I'm saying this is, like, I'm just saying what their logic is. It's very, very, like, niche and, like, specific. But, again, like, it's like, how they think. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I said, dial it back to it earlier. I said earlier how because a lot of people were saying, hey, Slippy, this netcode is better than what Ultimate has, which it is. It's rollback. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Nintendo has this back pocket fear where it's like, oh man, are people gonna like drop Ultimate online and play Melee online only? Which that would never happen, obviously. But I think that's what Nintendo thinks. That somebody else put out a superior like Smash online experience, and they view it as like a threat, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously it's definitely like a specific subsection of Nintendo. It's like, I don't think this is every Nintendo employee rallied together to be like,
exactly. And that again too, like like it's not like they're very. It's very obviously I think like the big suits that are doing this. I would be very hard pressed to like I would like this is very obviously like to me it's something that Sakura would never like that Sakura had no fucking hand in this, you know what I mean? Like he probably didn't, that's how it feels,
for sure. And like how because I've always wondered like if you emulate a game, right, is that inherently illegal, or if you own the game is it okay?
There is like it's just like I said, it's a big gray area. Like everyone's like, oh well, if you own the game, then it's fine, and I still believe that's true. I think what like I said earlier is like emulation isn't inherently illegal. It's just a matter of like, well, was the ROM? Which you can't ever actually prove this, right? So that's why it's gray. You can't ever actually prove where the ROM came from if you get it somewhere, right? Like. Anyone can claim, like, oh yeah, I have a physical copy, but like, what if your physical copy was from a pirated copy, and then you upload that ROM, and that's a pirated ROM, and now it's illegal, you know what I mean? The thing is that you can't enforce it either. So that's why Nintendo's, like, action is, like, I think to me, why Nintendo's action is, like, come on. Yeah. Like, it's twofold. Like, I don't see why they did, because, like, again, you said they don't give a shit about Melee. They don't. I mean, because they don't make money from Melee. They have Ultimate. Okay, then what does this have to do with anything? Why would them doing this with Melee like affect you in any way? You know what I mean?
And here it seems like there's a bit of.
That's how I see it.
But like for this specific one too, it seems like there was beef, right? Because like Big House statement is the Big House is heartbroken to share we've received the cease and desist from Nintendo of America to cancel our upcoming online event. We were informed we do not have permission to host or broadcast the event, primarily due to the use of Slippy. Sadly, all our competitions are affected. We are forced to comply with the order and cancel the Big House Online for both Melee and Ultimate. Refund information will be sent shortly. We apologize to all those impacted. From Big House's statement, right, it seems like why did Big House in their statement leave out the fact that they refused Nintendo's like demand to not use Slippy? You know what I mean? Like that's where it gets weird.
I think that's something they should have been transparent about if it did or didn't happen. Like I said, we don't exactly know the whole story. I think honestly, for them, I think what happened was they were like, well, somebody has to stand up for, the Melee community. Somebody has to make sure that, because if you have to think about this, right? So many people entered this event for Melee. There are players who entered for Melee. They have a pot, like a prize pot for Melee. They have all this set up. They probably were like, well, we're not going to just, take that. You know what I mean? And I think what happened was they didn't expect it to backfire in the way where they got Ultimate Can too. I think that's what they didn't expect to happen. You know what I mean?
Definitely a big
because issue. I do agree. I think, I do think... Now, here's the thing of why Nintendo shouldn't have done this, in my opinion. Because a lot of people are like, well, Nintendo's protecting their IP and blah, 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 blah. Okay, but here's the thing. One, we said, they don't make money from Melee. They don't care. Two, if Nintendo had made Melee available, let's say even 2 or 3 years ago, let's say Nintendo put out a version of Melee on the Switch. It doesn't even matter. Okay, it doesn't even matter if that version had bad netcode. The fact is they put it out. And if they put out that version and Big House is like, we're going to run this Slippy mod, then sure, okay, because Melee is widely available, you know what I mean? Nintendo should, that would make sense, because Nintendo wants to make money on people, buying their new released version of Melee, okay? But they didn't. Melee's not been available for easily available for 17 or so years. Let alone, it never had online capacity. And that's where the third point is. This is a global pandemic that does not seem to be slowing down in this area, at least in North America. And the fact of the matter is there's literally no other way to play Melee. There's none.
Yeah, because
I think that's the kicker. Shutting down an online event when there's no other way to compete safely is I think is the most egregious part of this, because you're basically saying, you want to enjoy our game, either you can't because you're taking it down, or risk getting sick in public, which there's no events going on right now.
Yeah, no, I don't think for them it's go get sick in public. It's definitely more just you're gonna have to figure it out on your own, which is not good. That's not a good thing, especially because you think we're still the pandemic stuff isn't slowing down. Even if we get a vaccine in 2 months or 3 months, which it seems to be it's still gonna be a few months till it rolls out, and physical events that are that big won't be available till maybe next fall. If then maybe, so it's it's definitely going to be a long time till then. And I think another issue is it sets the precedent, right? Of okay, now no other event was gonna wanna host a online Melee event like that because of this, right? Because you see, reading Nintendo's statement.
Yeah, exactly.
Nintendo appreciates the love and dedication for the fighting game community as of the Smash series. We have partnered with numerous Smash Bros. Tournaments in the past and have hosted our own online and offline tournaments for the game. And we plan to continue that in the future. Unfortunately, the upcoming Big House tournament announced plans to host an online tournament for Smash Melee that requires use of illegally copied versions of the game in conjunction with a mod called Slippy during their online event. Nintendo therefore contacted tournament organizers to ask them to stop. They refused, leaving Nintendo no choice but to step in and protect its intellectual property and brands. Nintendo cannot condone or allow piracy of its intellectual property. Again, when that statement came out, I definitely, because when I first saw the Big House thing, I was like, this sucks. Again, I understand. I was like, okay, this definitely sucks ass. Whatever. It's an old game. I understand they're using a mod to make the online better, but whatever. But then I don't know. And again, they could be lying. I mean, both of these people could be lying for all we know.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know.
Exactly.
And it's Nintendo being not only do they have illegal copies of the game, but they're also using a mod called Slippy. They have no choice but to protect its intellectual property. Because, okay, if you want to be objective, they're right, If you want to be completely objective, Nintendo legally has the right to not.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Even if, even if emulation isn't inherently illegal, in Nintendo's mind, they're well, we can't prove that people got those ROMs, through, from not pirated, blah blah blah. To them, it's just that their old timey way of thinking. That's preventing them from seeing the bigger picture.
Because I saw, let me find, I pulled up this tweet that I found. Yeah, like Capcom did the exact same thing for MVC2 at EVO, since they were gonna run it on emulators too, and that was even before they shut down even this year. Don't know why people thought that running a national on emulators wasn't going to be an issue for the property owners. So like, it's not necessarily just a Nintendo issue. Like it's murky. Like, you're just getting into murky territory when you're doing online emulation. Because one, first of all, what if the online like fucks up at some point, right? You just don't know that, right? Like, it's not their own application, like, for all you know, there's something buggy or fucked up about that thing that like could be exposed at any moment, right? And reflects poorly on their game. It's like it's not like Nintendo has gone through like scanned through the code of Slippy, right, to see what's going on in there and what could potentially fuck up or not fuck up. And I think, yeah.
See, but here's the thing though, like, in regards to that, I think what people are worried about now is if Slippy itself has like a target on its head, yeah. Right? Because now what you did say about Capcom is true. Now, but here's the thing, Capcom, there's a program called Fightcade that hosts a ton of old fighting games, a ton of cool Capcom games, Arxis, etc., etc., and nobody is going after, like, people who run events using that program, like, you know what I mean? No, those companies are going after this event, and they certainly aren't going after, like, the Fightcade program or anything like that. I think, but Nintendo in the past has historically been shown that, like, this fan game is using our IP, we're gonna shut that down, and where other companies haven't, and I think people have a right to be concerned if Slippy itself is, like, in danger,
right?
You know what I mean?
No, I mean, of course, it's definitely a bigger discussion too, of, like, Nintendo in general, right, hates fan games, right? They do not like them. They, like, it's pretty, like, I'm even shocked when people still to this day make Nintendo fan games, because I'm just like, I guess you want this to get shut down at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I don't, but I sort of agree. I feel like at this point, you're just better off, you can say, like, oh, I'm inspired by this game, but just use OCs honestly, or something. Like, it's a far less risky.
Exactly. Because I had seen, like, a tweet about this where someone was like, the only reason Sega allows so many Sonic mods and stuff is because it's, like, build their community and it made them, and, like, they've made games that inherently, like, popularized their brands and made them better and stuff like that, because obviously a lot of their Sonic games sometimes can fuck up for sometimes, but with Nintendo they have definitely their more bigger seal of quality, and they'd rather a poor game doesn't reflect on their IPs, right? Especially like when some of these mods nowadays like genuinely look the same or sometimes better, or using a different engine. It's like, again, obviously if I was in charge, I'd be like, whatever, let someone use a mod, let someone make a fan game, whatever. But like it's so as you could say, Slippy, because it's just you're entering murky territory, and I also don't think you can like assume that stuff like that's not gonna happen when you get into murky territory. Like, you are inherently taking a risk.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I think everyone on Big House, from just going off of both statements, it really feels to me like everyone in Big House knew about the issue that was gonna be up here. They were just hoping that Nintendo would not target them for it, given the circumstances. And I think that's where it backfired, because if Nintendo is involved with your event, it boils down to, you are allowed to play our games. If Nintendo backs out, you are not allowed to play their games, and that includes an unrelated game, because it's still, them as part of your event. You know what I mean? And that's why it ended up in Ultimate getting canned, and that's where it really backfired. Because I'm sure most people would be mad at Nintendo still if they did this to Melee, but if they were like, but fine, the Ultimate Tournament can keep going. Okay, sure, at least the event is still on in some capacity. But I think the double whammy here is what really, like, tempered everybody.
No, and I get it. It's like, but to me, it's like, what did they expect if it's true that Nintendo asked them to stop and they said no? Like, what did they think was gonna happen? Did they really think they were just gonna be like, that's really weird.
No, I think, if it's true that they did refuse like this, I think their refusal was more of a statement saying, like, come on, like, we're not going to let this happen. We have too much on the
Right.
line here in terms of money and organization, and for the sake of our community who just wants to play the game, we're putting our
Right.
foot down. I think they knew full well this would happen and wanted to make an event, like, oh, not an event, but like make a statement like this, and they wanted this to happen. They wanted this exact situation to happen so that people would go up to Nintendo about it. You know what I mean? It was very much done on purpose as a form of protest. And I'm like I said, I can't inherently blame them because they just had as much involvement of it as Nintendo does.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And obviously, like we've seen now, like this movement of free Melee, which I assume that people are saying just like to have it, just to have it be able to like be played and stuff like that. It's like, like I said, it's hard. Again, I'm seeing a lot of tweets today. 19 years old, everybody's like excited, but everyone's using the hashtag. Like I said, Melee is a really specific situation. Like a lot of fighting games, they inherently, like, there's something I understand how annoying it must be that like I've even been annoyed by this. Right, I've like I'd say most fighting games, right, when the sequel comes out, right, people just move on to that. Again, of course, there's a community that go back to the old ones, right? But there's something about Melee, right? Obviously, the way it plays, its mechanics, its movements, and all that stuff that people just stick to, right? So it's like there is definitely like an inherent like, I don't know, like to me at some point there's gotta be, and I mean that it was a big deal last year, right?
I think here's what really separates Melee from a lot of the older titles, as you mentioned. And that is the availability. Yeah. Now, you say, like, normally when a new version of the game, of a fighting game comes out, people will move on. But you still have dedicated players. You still have people who play Third Strike. You still have people who play Street Fighter 2 Turbo still, The difference is that those companies of those other fighting games, they will put those older games on PC or other, like, newer consoles so that people can still access them legally and pay for them, and they can still make money. The difference of Melee is that, again, Nintendo has not made Melee available in like 16 or so years, and people still are dedicated to playing it. Like, just not too recently, we saw Accent Core Plus R with Guilty Gear get an update where it has rollback netcode and it's like available on PC, and they basically like let the rollback netcode testing just run indefinitely until they can get it like fully implemented. Again, and that game is very old. It's a very old arcade game, and that's giving that sort of treatment. I think that's again, like, if Nintendo just would re-release Melee in any, like, literally at this point in any capacity, I could totally understand where they're coming from.
And again, I don't even think it's just a Melee thing. Like, in general, Nintendo, when it comes to GameCube games, they just don't really, like, honestly, aside from Wind Waker HD and now Sunshine, which took like 16 years to finally be ported, like, we really don't get GameCube re-releases. I don't necessarily think it's an issue of let's not re-release like Melee. It's just an issue of like they don't necessarily have like they've never had virtual console for GameCube. So it's a matter of like when they'd get that up or when they do that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, like, exactly.
I get it. I like I said. If I was in charge of, like, if I was Nintendo in this, like, if I was Nintendo and they told me no, right, I'd be like, well, fuck you. It's like if your parent comes in your room and says you can't play with this toy, and you say, yes, I will, and then they're like, okay, well, you're not playing at all then, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, and they take it away from
exactly.
you. Yeah, exactly.
Right? But again, if it was just like they're just gonna use this, whatever, I'd personally be like, whatever, just go for it, right? But again, I understand the frustration. I think, like, some of you are taking it a little extreme, but again, I understand being vocal. Like, being vocal time and time again has shown that it works. Obviously, don't be an asshole. Like, people saying, fuck, if you write hashtag fuck Nintendo at free Melee, that Nintendo's not going to want to hear you out there, right? If you're like...
Yeah, also, like, I want to, like, go back because we've had a similar situation with this before. Two separate occasions, because there was one time in EVO 2013 actually where everything was being played on proper consoles, proper disc, proper setups, everything, and Nintendo still wanted to try and shut the event down for Melee because they like they're like, you don't have like a streaming license, blah blah blah, and luckily people rallied enough to get that to get Nintendo back off from that because everything there was legal. And then again we saw this with Project M. If you remember Project M. The fan version of Brawl that was modded. It had like really cool, crazy mechanics. People really liked it. That also basically got shut down by Nintendo.
I definitely think that one's more fair because that is like
that's exactly what I was gonna say. It sucks. It really sucks that Project M had to die like that. I don't think it's fair. But I think that was a more understandable like decision than this one. You know what I mean? Because I think, given what was going on at the time, okay, yes, it is a mod. It is, they have Smash 4 coming out. They want people to play Smash 4. This is like, Melee isn't taking away from Ultimate. And literally because of the current climate, there's no other way to play Melee. You know what I mean? I think that's why this comes off as way more like harsh,
I think I honestly I think the fear comes from the fact that now that we're like Melee was already like its player base is already getting smaller and smaller, right?
Yeah, it's getting smaller and smaller. It's getting more niche, but people have been sort of coming back in because of Slippy, because it's more accessible. It's easier to play online.
But that's what I'm saying. Now that not only is Melee niche, but the fact that now you can't have physical events to play Melee, like it's shrinking it even more. And I think that's where the big fear for this specific situation is coming from, Like if right now the world was normal, but this specific thing was going to be an online event, I don't think anyone would have been that mad. Like if this was a specific online event and whatever, every other event's in person, this would have been like, okay, whatever, this sucks, but it's fine. We'll just host other events in person, blah, blah, blah. But I think I think this one just caused it's almost like a nerve, like you struck someone's nerve and like everybody came and talked about it and all that stuff. So it's definitely, I think there's like a lot of factors going on in this specific one. Like I said, there's the fact that it's muddy between who's right and who's wrong between Big House and Nintendo. It's a matter of just Nintendo in general, how they are with their marketing and all this stuff. It's like, again, like Nintendo is weird, right? They are to me, they are a weird company, right? They make weird decisions.
Yeah, very, very weird. Like, because, again, it's just, I think it's a matter of them just not adapting to the times. They're always a little bit behind. Because, I had mentioned earlier, it wasn't until, 2014, 2015, where they were like, you know what, fine, you can do YouTube videos with our content. Before they had, a partner, you had to go through, a partners program. Before that, they were like, well, they would strike videos because they were like, people are profiting off of our IP, but it's literally just someone doing a video of your game.
Yeah, exactly.
They're so behind on stuff like that. And I think that's just because of how the company is, you know what I mean? Very, very old blood company. And I think my other point, just last one was plenty. Melee is interesting again because I think a ton of older games that have still have events that are being run like this, they still have communities that exist without the support. Melee has existed without Nintendo support for a very, very long time. And now when Nintendo slowly sort of decided to get involved with events, now it's Melee's struggling again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and
I think it's just weird that this is one of the few older fighting games that people still go back to that's actively being pushed away by the company of the people who are playing it, because normally people are normally the companies are people are playing our old game. How can we make money off of this? How can we profit? If Nintendo was basically if Nintendo was smart, they just would release Melee again at some capacity, and they would make a lot of money.
Oh, for sure, yeah, of course, yeah. Obviously, they couldn't touch the game because that game is so specific with how their people break it and stuff like that. I think that's another thing too. Melee is inherently a game that obviously, I mean, it's kind of a lot of fighting games. A lot of it is people break it in certain ways to get through. So again, I think like I said, like, it's weird because Nintendo too is like, they're specifically a game company, right? They specifically make games, right? That's their one thing. Obviously they make toys sometimes, but even then they connect to their games. But it's like, they are a video game company. It's not like PlayStation, where that's a division within Sony that makes movies and computers and all this stuff. So there's like shady business moves being done because of like big wigs from even Hollywood and all this stuff, or even the same thing with Microsoft. Nintendo just inherently makes games, right? So I think that's why they are so super protective with their stuff, right? Because that's their thing, right? Like, again, if you were a fucking, what's it called, a bread company, right? You're inherently gonna be focused on the bread, you know, like you're not gonna like, whereas like a company like Sony, like I said, when you have movies and you have computers, you have phones, it's like when you see a small problem within something else, you can overlook it more, right? You can just like let them, it's like, okay, whatever, they're doing this with this game, whatever, we're making millions off our movies or this or that. Where it's like, yeah, with Nintendo, it's like, because they are so, because Nintendo is like focused in, right? That's how they catch all these fan games. That's how they catch this, because they see everything, because that's their one thing. It's games. And again, like I said, I don't think it's cool. Like I said, if I was in charge, I'd be like, let someone make a ROM, make someone make a thing. Obviously, selling it is a different story. Like if someone makes a modded game and they're like selling it for money, like it I don't know, man, it just gets murky. Like everything, like just in general, yeah.
Well, no. Well, I 100% agree. Like that is, you are just asking for it. Like that, if you are doing a fan project or of any capacity, and you're like, here's like a Patreon or here's a PayPal if you want to give money to help us make this work, you are, like it or not, indirectly getting money from, you know, their IP, and that's like that's a big no-no. Like I am all for fan works, I'm all for fan projects, etc., etc. But if you are going to start asking money for said projects, you are just that. No, I'm sorry, you have no.
Like it's like
ground.
there's that. You know? There's that Mario 64, like that PC version. Like there's like, I don't know what they're called, Project 64 or something. They're the ones who are making that. They basically work on that Mario 64 mod where he's using the old character model or whatever, right? And they have a Patreon, right? I'm like, that's like really murky, right? Because like you're like, again, I'm not saying you're not allowed to, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be supported. You're making something really cool. You're putting HD assets into Mario 64. You're making it the game people would have liked in the 3D All Stars, right? But it's like, no, inherently you're making money with Nintendo's IP. That's kind of like, and no matter what, that's murky, right? Again, it's like if someone calls their, I mean, I don't monetize this, but like, let's say I made a shit ton of money off this podcast, and then someone called their podcast the Smash Dispatch EX, right? And it's like, obviously you're like using the name and the IP and stuff like that, so it just gets weird with that stuff. But yeah, like, again, with I think the idea here is like, if we want to talk about how Nintendo can improve, I think Nintendo has to like, I think there's gotta be like someone who like looks at these situations like case by case, you know what I mean? Like, okay, like they need like a guy or like a group at Nintendo to be like, look at this tournament, like what are they doing, who are they, what's their thing? It's like, even like for Slippy, right? Like they should like be allowed to go through the code, right? See what's going on, right? Like you don't want to see code maybe that's like stolen from another thing, like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like they need to be able to, they need a group of people that can focus in on some of the certain events or fan stuff that goes on with Melee or whatever, just so that like, instead of it just being shut down because one guy probably looked at the document and said, oh, okay, they're running a fake version of Melee. No, can it? You know, have people that are like, no, that's not what's happening here. Like, they're playing a version of Melee that's using our existing copy and just adding rollback and using local multiplayer. You know what I mean? That's kind of how
exactly.
I don't know if you have, do you think there's like a way they can get better with that stuff?
No, I definitely agree. Like, it's just a matter of how can there be like a middle ground, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and I feel like this is a weird case where, you know, Nintendo was involved with the event, and that's why this happened. Because there definitely are like online events for Melee that have happened, and Nintendo hasn't done anything about it. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is just a very, very like really like niche.
Is it probably because what's it called? Isn't it probably because what was I gonna say? like this specific event they've worked with before, like they've worked with these organizers before. I think so, right? I think there's a thing, like if you're just a random person hosting a random event online, as opposed to something like Big House where like you've worked with these guys before, and it feels like you're getting into a weird, you're getting into a weird argument almost. So that's where it gets really weird. But yeah, no, like again, like I said, to kind of wrap the discussion on this, because we somehow went actually really long on it. But it's like, I think, like I said, if it were up to me, bro, like I would say just we need to accept like Melee. Just I don't think honestly, as cool as Slippy is, I just think it's gonna become more and more of an issue. I don't see Nintendo. I do not see a world where with Slippy specifically, Nintendo lets that fly. Right, local Melee is one thing, but I think this online thing, I don't personally think it's gonna get better. Would I love it to? Absolutely. Do I want those fans to be happy? Absolutely. Again, I joke around online a lot about like, what, Melee, just let it die, move on. But I understand people are passionate about it. Someone got a free Melee tattoo. That's, you know, that's a little extreme. But again, there's passion. So like, it's just the idea that like, look, if you're gonna, I think you just gotta accept that for this specific thing, Melee's gonna have to take an L until Nintendo make maybe HD releases or whatever. And again, just hope for a better future with this stuff. And again, but voice your concern. I always say voice your concern. Don't be disrespectful, but voice your problems. Going in Nintendo of America's replies and saying, like, when they're tweeting about Age of Calamity and replying, oh, but you hate fucking Melee. Fuck you, hashtag. It's like, that no one's gonna want to listen to that. It's like be thoughtful, be like, we've seen this many times. Like Nintendo has literally changed things because of fan feedback. I mean, they added GameCube support for Mario Sunshine, right? Why? Do you think they did that for fun? No, because they saw a shit ton of people saying, why doesn't Sunshine have GameCube controller support? Why doesn't it do it? It's like every company listens. Like we live in a different era now. It's not 15 years ago where like you're writing on a forum and they're not seeing this. It's like now it's like these companies have phones, they have internet, they know everything at all times. So voice your opinion if you have it. And again, I would say also to like choose your battles. Like choose the battles you can win, as opposed like there's no point of jumping headfirst into a 1 versus 100 battle, right? It's like choose your battles wisely, choose how you can strategically get into it and all that stuff, you know what I mean? So that's kind of my advice. Yeah, that's everything there. Again, obviously, like I said, Nintendo, hopefully in the future they get better. Like I said, Nintendo adapts. It's just they take a long time. I'm someone I've paid attention to this company for a long time, and I would literally say they always take like 4 to 5 years to adapt to a certain thing. It wasn't until the Switch where they got like a paid online service, right, with free stuff, like which started in the PS3 and Xbox era. It wasn't until like last gen where they even had online in their games, and that started way before in other like good like normal online, not necessarily. You know what I mean? My point is, it's just they take a while to adapt to things. They're not the best, and yeah. So that's kind of everything I got on this. So yeah, any final thoughts before we wrap it?
I think I am interested to see what's what ends up happening. I mean, I honestly don't really think anything's going to end up happening, because I think it's just a set and done sort of thing, and people are going to figure out what to do next. But I'd like to see some development happen. Yeah,
it'll be really interesting to see. Yeah, well, it depends how far it goes, because I do think for this thing, people are going to forget about it in a week for the most part. But we're gonna see what happens. So yeah, guys, let us know what you think about the entire situation and stuff in the comments below. Let us know anything else, all your thoughts, all this stuff, how Nintendo can get better, whatever, all that. Keep it nice, keep it constructive, and of course, we'll see you all next time. Remember, my name, my Twitter on the down low there. You can follow me there. You can subscribe to me here for more on my Twitch. You can follow Ultima at Ultima ShadowX, and that's it. That's all. Thank you all for watching, and peace out.